"That tattoo," the old barber said, his scissors pausing mid-cut. "I've only seen it once before, in a classified file." The customer tensed. "You have clearance?" "Better," the barber replied. "I designed it." Frank O'Malley had cut hair in the same small shop in Georgetown for 43 years. His customers ranged from Senate staffers to college students, from local businessmen to the occasional tourist who wandered in from M Street. But he'd never seen this particular design outside of a locked drawer in his basement, an intricate pattern of interwoven symbols that had once meant everything to a team of warriors who'd never returned from their final mission. The customer in his chair, young, athletic, with the bearing of someone used to command, wore the tattoo partially visible beneath his collar. Most people would have seen it as decorative, maybe tribal. But Frank knew better. Each line, each curve had meaning. Names encoded in ancient symbols, coordinates hidden in Celtic knots, a mission briefing disguised as art. "Sir," the customer said quietly, his hand moving toward what Frank suspected was a concealed weapon, "I need you to explain that last statement." Frank continued cutting, his movement steady despite the tension now filling his small shop. November 1977. Operation Archangel. The team needed a way to carry critical intel that wouldn't be recognized if they were captured. Something that could hide in plain sight. The customer's reflection in the mirror showed careful neutrality, but his eyes had sharpened with interest. "Go on." "I was different back then. Not just a barber. Artist, cryptographer, specialized in creating unbreakable codes disguised as ordinary things. The team leader, Colonel Marcus Hayes, he came to me with an unusual request. Said they needed something that could pass as a tribal tattoo but actually contained everything they needed to know about their mission and their extraction plans." Frank's scissors moved rhythmically, each snip precise. "Took me 3 weeks to design it. Had to incorporate 18 names, 12 sets of coordinates, and complete mission parameters into something that looked like traditional Celtic artwork. The team memorized what each pattern meant, then had it tattooed on different parts of their bodies." "The mission failed," the customer said flatly. "Team never came back." "That's the official story," Frank agreed, brushing hair from the customer's shoulders. "But you're wearing their ink. Which means either you found something, or..." "Or what?" "Or you're one of them. One of the children they left behind. Because that's the part that wasn't in any file. Each team member encoded their kids' names into the design too. Insurance, they called it. A way to find each other if everything went wrong." The shop had grown quiet. Even the usual street noise seemed muted, as if Georgetown itself was holding its breath. "My father," the customer said finally, "never came home from a classified mission when I was 6. Left me a letter to be opened on my 18th birthday. Inside was a drawing, this drawing. Said if I ever needed help, ever needed to understand what happened to him, I should find the man who designed it." Frank set down his scissors, studying the young man's face in the mirror. "You have his eyes. Marcus Hayes always had that same look, like he could see right through you to the truth beneath. Colonel Hayes was my father." "But how did you recognize it so quickly? After all these years?" "Because I've spent 43 years watching for it. Cutting hair, listening to stories, waiting for someone to walk in wearing my artwork. The team made me promise, if any of their children ever found me, I'd help them understand." Frank moved to the shop door, flipping the sign to "Closed" and pulling down the blinds. From beneath the counter, he retrieved an old leather case, its surface worn smooth by decades of handling. "Your father's team didn't fail their mission, son. They completed it. But what they found, it was bigger than anyone expected. The kind of discovery that people would kill to keep secret. So they disappeared, went deep underground to protect both the intel and their families." The customer, Hayes' son, watched as Frank opened the case, revealing yellowed papers covered in intricate designs. "Each variation of the tattoo was different," Frank explained. "Contained specific information only that team member would need. Your father's version, it wasn't just about the mission. It was about you. About making sure you could find your way to the truth when the time was right. And that time is now." Frank nodded slowly. "The fact that you're here, wearing that ink, it means something's changed. The wheels are turning again. Because that tattoo isn't just art or code, it's a key. A key to something your father and his team gave their lives to protect. Outside, Georgetown continued its normal Monday morning routine, unaware that in a small barber shop, long-buried secrets were surfacing. What neither Frank nor young Hayes could know was that their conversation had already triggered silent alarms. Because some secrets, once awakened, cannot be contained. "Your father left something else with me," Frank continued, reaching beneath his barber chair. "Said to give it to you if you ever found me. But I have to warn you, once I hand this over, everything changes. There are people who've spent decades trying to find what your father's team discovered. People who won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets close to the truth." Hayes straightened in the chair, his military bearing more pronounced. "I've spent 25 years wondering why my father never came home. 25 years studying this tattoo, learning its language, preparing for something. I'm ready." Frank pulled out a small metal box, its surface etched with the same intricate patterns as the tattoo. "No, son. Nobody's ever ready for this. But sometimes we don't get to choose our battles, sometimes they choose us." As he handed over the box, Frank noticed movement outside his shop, subtle, professional, the kind of surveillance most people would never spot. But he'd been trained to see such things, trained by the very team that had trusted him with their secrets decades ago. "We don't have much time," he said quietly. "They'll have detected the box's transmitter by now. Within hours, this place will be surrounded, some coming to protect us, others to silence us. The question is, are you ready to finish what your father started?" Hayes held the box, his fingers tracing patterns identical to his tattoo. "You knew this would happen. You've been waiting for it." "For 43 years, Frank confirmed. "Cutting hair, keeping watch, protecting the last piece of a puzzle that cost 18 good men their freedom. Your father's team didn't die on that mission, son. They chose to disappear, to guard something so important they gave up everything, including their families, to keep it safe." The morning sun slanted through the shop's windows, catching the silver in Frank's hair and the determination in Hayes's eyes. Two men connected by ink and secrets, about to unlock a mystery that had waited a generation to be revealed. And somewhere in the streets of Georgetown, wheels were already in motion. Because the code hidden in that tattoo, the secret locked in that box, was about to change everything. Not just for a barber and a soldier's son, but for a nation that had never known how close it had come to disaster, or how much 18 men had sacrificed to prevent it. Frank picked up his scissors again, continuing the haircut as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. By noon, his small shop would become the center of an operation decades in the making. And the truth encoded in a father's last gift to his son would finally come to light. The metal box hummed softly in Hayes's hands, responding to his touch in a way that suggested technology far beyond its apparent age. Frank watched as the younger man traced the patterns, his fingers following paths identical to his tattoo. "Your father designed the biometric lock," Frank explained. "DNA recognition combined with specific pressure points that match the tattoo's pattern. Only a Hayes carrying that exact ink could open it." In a secure room beneath the Pentagon, alarms began flashing. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, head of Special Projects Division, stared at her monitors in disbelief. "Sir," she called to General Richards, "we've got a Pattern 7 activation. The Hayes protocol is live." "Impossible," Richards responded, but the evidence was undeniable. After 43 years, the quantum beacon hidden in Frank O'Malley's barbershop had awakened. Back in Georgetown, Hayes found the correct sequence. The box clicked open, revealing contents that made even Frank catch his breath. Inside lay a single crystal, seemingly ordinary but giving off a faint blue glow. "Quantum storage," Frank whispered. "Your father's team, they found something. Something that changed everything we thought we knew about physics, about reality itself." Hayes lifted the crystal carefully. The mission wasn't about intel gathering, was it? No. Operation Archangel was a response to something we detected in 1977, energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. Your father's team tracked them to a location in the Ural Mountains. What they found there? Frank's voice trailed off. "Tell me," Hayes demanded. "They found proof we weren't alone. Not aliens, something else. Evidence that another civilization, far more advanced than ours, had existed on Earth millennia ago. But that wasn't the most important discovery." At the Pentagon, Mitchell's team was mobilizing. We've got movement in the quantum signature. After 40 years dormant, it's becoming active. Get me Agent Thompson, Richards ordered. If that crystal is becoming unstable. In the barber shop, Frank continued his explanation. The ancient civilization had learned to manipulate reality itself. But they'd made a mistake, created a quantum fracture that nearly destroyed everything. Your father's team found their failsafe device. This crystal contains the knowledge of how they stopped it, and what? And evidence that the fracture is happening again. The team knew they'd be hunted if anyone discovered what they'd found. So they encoded everything into that tattoo, hid the crystal with me, and went underground. They're still out there, watching, waiting for the moment when the world would need their discovery. Hayes studied the crystal. Why now? Why did my father arrange for me to find this today? Frank checked his watch. Because the energy signatures are back. Stronger than ever. Your father's team knew the exact date it would begin again. They've spent 40 years preparing, positioning themselves to help when the time came. Outside, more watchers had appeared. Some were clearly military, special forces operating under deep cover. Others moved with the predatory grace of intelligence operatives. The shop had become the center of a silent battle between those who protected the secret and those who would kill to possess it. The tattoo, Frank said urgently, it's more than a code. It's a map. Each team member's version contains part of a larger pattern. Together, they form instructions, how to use the crystal, how to seal the quantum fracture before it tears reality apart. At the Pentagon, Mitchell's team detected new signatures. Sir, we're picking up quantum resonance from multiple locations. All over the world. The team, Richards breathed. They're activating their beacons. After all these years, Hayes's tattoo had begun to glow faintly, responding to the crystal's energy. How many survived? From my father's team. 15 of the original 18, Frank replied. Scattered across the globe, living under deep cover, each protecting their piece of the puzzle. The tattoos aren't just code, they're quantum-linked. When the crystal activated, it sent a signal through the ink itself. More vehicles were arriving outside, unmarked SUVs and tactical units taking up position around the block. Frank noticed that some bore insignia he hadn't seen since 1977, the Special Access Division created specifically for Operation Archangel. Your father was the key, Frank continued. As team leader, his pattern contained the master sequence. That's why he made sure you'd get the tattoo, made sure you'd find me when the time was right. Because only a Hayes could activate the crystal, and only someone with his DNA could stabilize the quantum link. Hayes's hands had stopped trembling, replaced by the steady calm of a soldier accepting a mission. How many others? Children like me, carrying their father's tattoos. 14. Each one raised in secret, trained without knowing why, prepared for this moment. By now, they're all receiving the signal. They'll be coming here. The barber shop was always meant to be the gathering point. The crystal's glow had intensified, casting blue shadows across the shop's walls. Outside, the watchers had given up pretense. Special forces teams were now openly establishing a security cordon around the block. At the Pentagon, Mitchell's monitors erupted with new data. Sir, quantum signatures are converging on Georgetown. And we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the original site in the Urals. It's starting, Richards said grimly. God help us all. Frank began closing up his shop with practiced efficiency, but not before retrieving more items hidden throughout the seemingly ordinary space. Each drawer, each cabinet contained pieces of equipment that looked decades ahead of current technology. Your father's team didn't just hide, he explained as he worked. They used their knowledge to advance our technology in secret. Everything from quantum computing to zero-point energy, they fed it to us slowly, making sure we'd be ready when the fracture returned. Hayes helped gather the equipment, his military training obvious in his precise movements. All these years, getting haircuts from base barbers. I was supposed to find you, wasn't I? The tattoo was drawing me here. Quantum entanglement, Frank confirmed. The ink itself is linked across time and space. Your father knew that eventually, when the time was right, it would lead you to me. The crystal pulsed again, stronger now. Through the shop windows, they could see more vehicles arriving, not just military and intelligence units, but unmarked cars carrying passengers whose bearing marked them as more than ordinary civilians. "The others," Frank said softly. "They're arriving." Children of the original team, each carrying their father's quantum-linked tattoo. By noon, this shop will become what it was always meant to be, the control center for an operation 40 years in the making. Hayes stood at the window, watching as Special Forces teams established defensive positions around the block. "My whole life, everything I did, every choice I made, was preparing you for this moment," Frank finished. "Your father made sure you'd have the skills, the training, the instincts you'd need. They all did. Every member of the team prepared their children to carry on their mission." The crystal's glow had become a steady pulse, matching the rhythm of Hayes's heartbeat. Outside, the first of the others had arrived, men and women his age, each bearing tattoos that glowed with the same quantum energy. The final phase of Operation Archangel was beginning, and a small barbershop in Georgetown was about to become the center of a battle not just for secrets or power, but for the very fabric of reality itself. By noon, Frank O'Malley's barbershop had transformed into something out of science fiction. The quantum crystal pulsed in its containment field, casting ethereal blue light across walls now covered in holographic displays. 15 children of the original Archangel team, each bearing their father's glowing tattoos, gathered around equipment that seemed decades ahead of its time. "The quantum fracture is expanding," announced Dr. Sarah Thompson, daughter of the team's original physicist. Her tattoo spiraled down her right arm, mathematical equations hidden in Celtic knots. "The Urals facility is showing critical readings." Hayes studied the data streams, his military training merging with knowledge somehow transmitted through his quantum-linked tattoo. "How long until total breach?" 6 hours, Sarah replied. "Unless we can replicate what the ancient civilization did to stop it." Frank moved among them, no longer the simple barber but the man who had helped design the very code that had brought them together. "Your fathers knew this day would come. Everything they did, going underground, preparing you, waiting 40 years, it was all for this moment." Outside, Special Forces teams had established a full security cordon. The Pentagon's quantum detection grid was lighting up as more energy signatures converged on Georgetown. And deep beneath the streets, something was stirring, power systems hidden decades ago, waiting for this exact day. General Richards arrived personally, escorted by Colonel Mitchell. "Status report," he demanded. "The quantum link is stable," Hayes responded, his father's authority evident in his voice. "All 15 carriers are present. The crystal is interfacing with the ancient technology." "And the original team?" As if in answer, new signals appeared on the monitors. Across the globe, quantum signatures were moving, 15 points of light representing the surviving members of Operation Archangel, emerging from 4 decades of deep cover. "They're coming," Frank said softly. They knew their children would need them for the final phase. The shop's vintage radio crackled with encrypted transmissions. "Archangel 1, moving to position. Archangel 3, crossing Russian border. Archangel 7, approaching eastern seaboard." Each voice carried decades of preparation, of sacrifice, of waiting for this crucial moment. Sarah's equipment suddenly blared warnings. "The fracture is accelerating. Energy readings off the scale." The crystal's pulse increased, matching the heightened danger. Through their quantum-linked tattoos, the 15 children felt their father's knowledge flooding in, technical specifications, operational protocols, the true nature of what they faced. "It's not just a tear in space-time," Hayes announced, understanding flowing through his enhanced consciousness. "It's a doorway. The ancient civilization didn't die out, they sealed themselves away to contain the fracture. But now the seal is failing." Frank nodded grimly. "Your fathers found their fail-safe device, but it needed specific genetic markers to activate. That's why they encoded their DNA into the tattoos, why they made sure their children would carry the modified patterns." "We're the key," Sarah realized. 15 bloodlines, 15 quantum signatures, 15 pieces of the code needed to reseal the breach. Outside, the sky had taken on an unnatural tint. Citizens of Georgetown looked up in wonder at aurora-like patterns dancing in broad daylight. The quantum fracture was becoming visible to the naked eye. The first of the original team members arrived, Marcus Hayes Sr., materializing in the shop through technology that defied physics as the world understood it. Though 40 years older, he stood straight and proud, his original tattoo glowing in perfect harmony with his son's. "You did well," he told Hayes Jr., "all of you did. We've watched, waited, made sure you'd be ready." One by one, the other team members arrived, each reuniting with children they'd sacrificed everything to prepare for this moment. The shop hummed with quantum energy as fathers and children linked their tattoos, completing circuits designed decades ago. "The fracture is collapsing reality itself," Sarah reported. "If we don't act now, then we act," Hayes Sr. declared. "The circle closes today." The 15 pairs took their positions around the crystal, their tattoos creating a complex geometric pattern of light. Frank activated systems hidden in the walls, transforming the humble barber shop into the control center it had always been designed to be. "The ancient ones used quantum entanglement to seal the breach," Hayes Sr. explained. "But it required perfect synchronization across multiple genetic lines. We spent 40 years preparing for this, making sure our children would carry both the code and the capability to use it." The crystal's light intensified as father-child pairs joined their quantum signatures. The tattoos weren't just glowing now, they were projecting complex patterns into the air, creating a three-dimensional model of the seal they needed to create. At the Pentagon, Mitchell's quantum sensors were registering power levels that shouldn't have been possible. "Sir, the energy readings, it's like nothing we've ever seen." "Because we're not just seeing our technology," Richards replied. "We're seeing what humanity will become." In the Urals, the fracture had torn open the sky. But in a Georgetown barbershop, 30 people linked by blood and quantum science prepared to close it, to finish what an ancient civilization had started and what Operation Archangel had spent 40 years preparing to complete. "Now," Hayes Sr. commanded. 15 pairs of tattoos flared with impossible light. The crystal rose from its containment field, multiplying into 15 perfect copies. Reality itself seemed to bend as quantum energy flowed through patterns designed by a barber who had spent 40 years pretending to be nothing more than what he appeared. The seal took form, not just in the Urals, but in the quantum substrate of reality itself. Father-child pairs moved in perfect synchronization, their combined DNA activating protocols hidden in their very cells. "It's working," Sarah announced. "The fracture is stabilizing." In that moment, as reality itself was reshaped by 30 people bearing glowing tattoos, Frank O'Malley smiled. His shop had served its purpose, not just as a cover, but as the exact point in space-time where everything needed to come together. The quantum pulse that sealed the breach rippled across the planet, visible only to those who knew what to look for. In its wake, the ancient technology powered down, its purpose finally fulfilled. Hours later, as the sun set on a world that would never know how close it had come to unraveling, Hayes Jr. turned to his father. "What happens now?" "Now," Hayes Sr. smiled. "Now we don't have to hide anymore. The breach is sealed, the Ancient One's mistake corrected. It's time for humanity to take its next step." The barbershop would remain, not just as a cover, but as a memorial to 40 years of patience, sacrifice, and preparation. Frank would continue cutting hair, but his shop would also serve as a gathering point for a new generation of quantum-enhanced humans. The 15 children, their tattoos now permanently altered by the energy they had channeled, would become the core of a new organization. Not hidden this time, but working openly to guide humanity toward the future their parents had protected. And in a drawer beneath Frank's barber chair, a simple sign waited to be displayed: "Quantum cuts available by appointment only." Because sometimes the greatest secrets hide in the simplest places, and sometimes a barbershop is more than just a place to get a haircut, sometimes it's where reality itself can be reshaped, one quantum-encoded tattoo at a time. "Your father would be proud," Frank told Hayes Jr. as they closed up the shop that evening. "They all would be." "They are," Hayes Jr. replied, watching as his tattoo continued to pulse softly with quantum energy. "They always were. We just couldn't know until today." The street outside had returned to normal, special forces teams replaced by regular Georgetown foot traffic. But the world had changed, not just in the sealed quantum breach, but in the 30 people who now carried the key to humanity's next evolution. Frank picked up his scissors, ready for another day of maintaining his cover. But now his simple barbershop had become something more, a nexus point where science and sacrifice, family and duty, past and future had all converged to save reality itself. And somewhere in the quantum substrate of existence, the Ancient Ones nodded in approval. Their failsafe had worked, their mistake corrected by descendants they could never have imagined. All because a barber had recognized a tattoo, a father had trusted his son, and 30 people had been willing to wait 40 years to save everything that ever was or would be. The quantum age had begun, not with a bang or a breakthrough, but with a barber's recognition of a tattoo he had designed 4 decades ago. And in Georgetown, a small shop with a striped pole outside would continue its dual mission, providing perfect haircuts while guarding the threshold of humanity's quantum future. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.